Quick snap!
This quick snap is another lost episode of our guys doing what I used to call our Mano-y-Mano drill, which is a precursor to the three-man drill that I now use with my defensive line almost daily. The game, as Joe Daniel pointed out in a podcast I was listening to, comes down to a bunch of one-on-ones, getting your defensive line to understand that the offensive lineman across from him can really do one of three things. He can either come at me with some sort of reach block or base block. He can go away from me, releasing inside to either double team another defensive lineman or climb up to a linebacker, or he can go away from me with a pass set and I got to get upfield and match that. If you can get your defensive line really good at those three things, your defensive lineman's going to be better. On the flip side, as an offensive lineman, I've got to do those three things against that defensive lineman really well, almost no matter what type of offense I'm playing in. I either need to be able to reach him and take over a gap. I need to be able to release cleanly inside up to a linebacker or at least be doubling a defensive lineman inside of me. Or I got to be really good at an effective pass set. And what we're going to take a look at today, we weren't playing a passing team. I believe it was like 76% run, 24% pass that week. So we were really focused on getting our defensive line really good at just inside down block release and squeezing down space and playing inside, or a reach block where he's coming right at me. And conversely, on offense, we were working in a veer system, and our offensive linemen had to be good at releasing cleanly inside, getting up to the backer, or getting a shoulder, racing a guy to a sideline on rocket toss. So let's get into some of the film.
As I said in the introduction, the Mano-y-Mano drill is a one-on-one offensive line versus defensive line drill that is competitive and lets them refine their basic blocks as an offensive lineman, and as a defensive lineman, the corresponding reactions. You could set the drill up a couple different ways. We typically go with a silent count, and we go off the offensive line movement, so our defensive line's not ever listening to a snap count and trying to anticipate that and jumping off sides and things like that. But you could also have a coach stand behind each group. The coach facing the offensive lineman would give the signal for both the block and the count if you're varying different counts. And then you're either going off of that movement by the offensive lineman or the coach's cadence. There's our setup. The top bag or trash can represents the linebacker that the offensive lineman would be veer releasing to. The bag or can inside here is representing the inside threat, either a pulling guard trying to trap the defensive lineman or a dive back. The can or bag out to the side here is a potential running back on a sweep, put about 5 to 7 yards outside. And the bag or can back here is representing a quarterback if you're including a pass rush situation. Each of these squares are 2.5 yards by 2.5 yards. So down block, an offensive lineman gets a win if he gets a clean release on a vertical track up to the linebacker level before the defensive lineman hits the inside threat, whether that's a guard trap or a dive. The defensive lineman wins if he flattens the release of the offensive lineman off that track, continues to squeeze inside, and spills that inside threat with his outside shoulder before the offensive lineman is at the linebacker level. On a reach block, the offensive lineman wins if he knocks the defensive lineman back some and overtakes the outside shoulder, sustaining leverage until the end of the rep, however you want to end it. The defensive lineman wins if he conversely knocks the offensive lineman back and keeps outside leverage before ripping cleanly off the block at the end of the rep. So here's some film of our guys. First, you got to make sure they understand. Offensive line doesn't really stay on that. Defensive line doesn't take the opportunity to rip clean and pursue, so it takes a little bit teaching the drill. Here we got a veer release by Billy. Brandon's going to squeeze it down. And ultimately, Billy gets off clean enough. Brandon doesn't quite close as fast as he needs to. That's an offensive win. Got a good reach by freshman Cole here. and he's got the outside leverage. Keeps that outside leverage. Defensive line, not terrible, but that is an offensive line win to me. Got Ricky going to veer release, and Cole's just a little slow off the ball. Ricky's pad level could have been a little lower, and he gets off real clean, but he's up to that linebacker, no problem. So offensive win. Here we go. I think that's Kelvin. He's reaching Rick, and that's an offensive win. Good job with the hands by both guys. Be nice if the offensive guy, and our guys go both ways, so I believe he played some tight end for us back then. Here we go. Brandon veer releasing and just gets off the ball, so that's a offensive win. Real quick off the ball here. That's Danny veer releasing to Brandon. Brandon loses his feet. Offensive win. Real good dip and rip by Danny there. Billy versus Danny. Billy's reaching, and he's knocking Danny back, so we're going to give that to the offense. Maybe a hold at the end, but he dominated the drill. I'm not calling that I'm an official, and I'm a defensive coordinator. So got Billy versus Jermaine, and Jermaine jumps off sides a little bit. So I give that one to the defense. He's a running back, and he is wiggling in his stance. Normally guys don't notice that if you're back at running back as often. Here we go, Kendrick versus Billy. Kendrick gets down inside. Billy knocks him almost an entire grid box to the inside. And he makes that collision with the outside shoulder. He's spilling it. I give that to the defense. Just not great feet by Kendrick. So offense gets off clean. And he's a little late. Offensive win. Good reach block by Danny. And just freshman Cole's learning, trying to play the game fast. Danny beats him. Here we go, Brandon versus Danny, and pretty good, real good rep by both guys. Brandon, I give that to the offense because the defense went behind it. Brandon stretched that thing for 5 yards. An offensive running back is outside of the drill at that point. He's off and running. Here we go, Danny versus Kelvin. And at that point, I'm calling that a hold. Danny's held his ground just enough. He's worked to the outside, so that's a defensive win. And we don't call holds very much in this drill. It's your job as the defensive guy to get off. And this is a case of if I go upfield with that veer release as the defensive lineman, I'm blocking myself. We're not in a good spot to close on an inside threat, so that's an offensive win. Reach by Billy. Real good by Jermaine, working his hands. Right, let's go back because that's a great coaching point. This ends up being an offensive win, but Jermaine gets his hand back on the outside shoulder. So real late, he's able to rip off the block and be in position to pursue outside. Here we go, Jermaine blocking Kelvin now. Real good block for the running back. Looks like he should be an offensive lineman with the rest of us. Here we go, Danny. He gets the reach, offensive win. Now, the defense almost gets in a position to backdoor that, and you're going to see that coming up in a later clip. Brandon gets outside Danny, keeps that outside leverage, keeps him upfield a little bit, offensive win. Now they wanted to go again. Danny throws him behind. I'm actually going to give that to the defensive lineman. If anyone sets the edge out there, the outside linebacker or a defensive back, depending on who's playing force, the defensive line has a heck of a chance of making the play by taking the quick little backdoor and getting off the block so fast. So that one, defensive line by a little bit. Defensive line gets the win. Offensive line, if he blocks out like that, he's not doing the drill correctly. Right now, our inside linebacker is going to be able to plug that B gap inside. Offense is clean. Defense didn't close the space fast enough. Offense will win. Real good rep by offense. Drives them back too far. Offensive win. Good job by Kendrick over Danny. Real good block here. Nope, defense pulls it off. Kendrick gets to outside leverage. Using his hands. Should rip off the block a little quicker, but that's definitely a defensive win. Billy versus Jermaine. And that's a real good veer release for a flex bone fullback there. He's off low and ripping, and I'm going to give that to the offense. Offense is getting up on the linebacker level. I don't like that as a defensive coordinator. Billy's close here. But I'm giving that to the offense. Good pad level. Comes a reach. Danny versus Billy. And Danny wins that quickly. Offense. Last clip. Kendrick wins that. Gets outside leverage. Knocks him back. So there you go. Our mano-y-mano drill. It's just a quick competitive drill to work our down and veer to backer in our defensive line reaction, or our reach block, and again our stretching of the reach block on defense. Thanks for checking out this quick snap on Coaching Football with Brian Klee. Please follow me on Twitter at Coach Klee. Subscribe to the channel Coaching Football with Brian Klee by clicking down below. And if you have any further follow-up questions, email me at coachbrianklee@gmail.com.